Domain tools help security analysts turn threat data into threat intelligence. They take indicators from your network, including domains and IP addresses, and connect them with nearly every active domain on the internet. Those connections drive risk assessments, help profile attackers, guide online fraud investigations, and map cyber activity to attacker infrastructure. Fortune 1000 companies, global government agencies, and leading security solutions vendors use the Domain Tools platform as a critical ingredient in their threat investigations and proactive defenses. For more information, visit securityweekly.com/domain tools. Today's determined attackers easily bypass even the most advanced network defenses. Trying to ramp up staff to detect their backdoors can cost thousands of dollars and take months, even years. With Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, we enable junior analysts to detect even the most advanced backdoors in a matter of hours. Sign up for a demo and purchase our product today by visiting activecountermeasures.com/BSW. Active Countermeasures. Make every analyst a hunter.
Welcome back. Paul and I have some articles and insights for you, and I want to just kind of quickly explain how this is going to start unfolding. So we were last week at Source Boston. We had a chance to be together, and as Paul said in the first segment, we didn't really get a chance to catch up and talk until the end of the day afterwards. I was really surprised how many people came up to talk to us about this program in specific. In fact, I didn't even share this with Paul yet, but one of them told us they've made some vendor choices because of watching this program. So hopefully that's the type of stuff that we're able to bring you. A couple people then specifically said, hey, when's the book club going to start? And hey, I love that performance idea. Yeah, definitely do a segment on that. Oh, and when are you going to talk about how to manage time better? When are you going to talk about those things? As I was putting together the articles today, I just wanted to give people a quick update on that. I'm working on it. You know, there's a big difference between putting together a quick article and pulling out the things that we like and riffing on it versus actually thinking through and giving you objectionable evidence on things that can be done, or objectionable evidence that helps you make better decisions and get to those types of places. The other thing I'm looking at is by planning them in advance, we're trying to book guests like a George Finney or a Sean Toom, or somebody can come in and explain that. We're going to start that out next week. We've got somebody coming in to talk to us about third-party risk management and what it was like building the program from the ground up with some real specific actionable items for anybody struggling with third-party risk and third-party risk management right now. So it's coming. Book club, I'm going to actually try to just sit down and pick out 6 books for the back half of the year and figure out a little bit of the mechanics of it. And we should be announcing that within the month and rolling it out probably right in the beginning of Q3.
I can't wait to see your recommendations, Michael, because I tell you,
I have too many now.
There's a big difference, though, between like other people's recommendations, what I might learn on my own, and your recommendations were like spot on, like life-changing. Those 3 books we talked about with The Brain Audit, Never Split the Difference, and Play Bigger. Like, awesome. I want more of that.
Yeah, well, and that's so what I've been trying to do now. And it's funny you bring that up, Paul. That's actually like I sat down this morning internally. We had a conversation here, and I said, all right, so I've got like 13, 14, 15 outlined, and these other 5 that have been really good for me. Whoa, what do we pick? So I'm actually trying to set some criteria that it needs to be good for us as a leader, good for us as an individual contributor, so it can work either way.
Yes.
And I'm adding a dimension. I want it to be good for my teenage children as well.
Sure.
That they can read along with it and start to think about some of these characteristics and maybe instill them a little sooner than it took, at least for me, to try to figure some of them out. The other thing I am trying to look at then is I want these to actually be useful, practical, actionable insights that you invest your time in it and go, oh, that's worth it. I easily got 2 or 3. Some of you have sent in book ideas and recommendations. I'm checking all those out as well. And what I'm going to try to do is skim and read ahead to really think through how we're going to do it and then go back through it with everybody. That said, if you've got a book club, like one of the online, hey, this is the book we're reading, why we liked it. Tell me what you like about it. Tell me what you wish it had. Because I'm trying to figure out things like, should we cover it over the course of a month? Like, there's only gonna be one segment where we really get into it, but should we do you want updates? Do you want us to all kind of make sure we're reading it together? Like, if you've got something you like, send me an email or shoot me a note and let me know what's working for you and how you like it, and that'll help us kind of shape this up. But that's in motion. So I'm trying to figure that out, and you're right, Paul. Trying to find good suggestions and figure out how to integrate that, really work that forward. The performance side of things, we got a ton of options. The value prop scorecard side, quick update on that. You and I talked. We did get the chance last week to talk about using this, and it was great. I had some conversations very much tuned on the scorecard, and we talked about 2 things: how we can use it within our teams to figure out where we need to focus, and then, as Paul and I have talked about, we're going to do a co-branded vendor scorecard, vendor value prop scorecard I can't tell you how many people said to me, good, when is that available and how do we use it? Because I really need that. I've got too many vendors.
Yeah.
And
that's the one that's really catching on like wildfire, dude. And no offense to those dealing with real wildfires when they do happen. But I mean, just the feedback that I'm getting on, even myself, the reason I ask about the books and in this, even myself, if I put myself in the listener's shoes, I'm like, I really want that value prop scorecard. Like that's really going to help me.
Yep. And so what I did specifically at Source Boston was I got a chance to talk to some of these security leaders and I said, hey, if we did this, if a vendor came to you and said, I know how to answer this, and yep, I'm in. It would be more useful to me because I would know that after 5 minutes, if it doesn't make sense to continue, they're not going to waste my time. I got to figure it out. So there's a lot there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take, and some of you who have reached out already talked to me. You'll be hearing from me this week. I'm going to do like a mini 6-week beta. And to be perfectly candid, that's part of what I'm going to figure out this week. I want to talk to some of you individually and with some teams. You can work with a couple of perhaps some of our partners or some vendors. Work some of these pieces through, see what it looks like, and then we'll unveil a more complete program starting back half of the year. So everything we've been talking about this quarter, we are slowly moving in that direction to increase that programming so that in any given month, we're showing you how to use the vendor scorecard. We're showing you different ways that and stuff that we're testing on how to improve our own performance and how to be better as leaders as well as better as individual contributors. And then the books. And so, pretty much our programming should start to really fill itself out. And your feedback, listening to this, watching this has really driven that. And as we do it, send more stuff in. We'll keep looking at how to do it better. So
awesome.
All right, so let's go through this. I put this one in because I think it's really important. We're going to open up, and in fact, I kind of broke a personal rule. I put 2 articles from the Harvard Business Review in. One of them is actually more of the magazine article. One is one of the blogs. They're both really good, and they kind of fit. So I spaced stuff out a little bit. Here's what we open up with: why people really quit their jobs. Here's what I loved about it, and this is their quote, direct quote. They left when their job wasn't enjoyable, their strengths weren't being used, and they weren't growing in their careers. Yeah. Think about that for a second. We always like to say, "Oh, people don't quit because of money." They're, well, if you exempt it, they don't quit the company. They quit the manager. They quit the leader. And what they basically said is, yeah, that's kind of true, but not really. Let's go deeper. What does that actually mean, right? I mean, it's not like everybody's a jerk. Oh, it's because they're not having fun. They're not learning. They're not growing. It doesn't make any sense. All right. So now juxtapose this with the security industry and the so-called shortage. I don't know. Some of you are really struggling. Well, if somebody comes and works with you, will it be enjoyable for them? Will they get to exercise their strengths and grow in that position? And what does that look like for them? And I got to tell you, for all the doom and gloom we've seen, Paul, I've had the pleasure this year to work with a couple high performance teams looking at issues like this, and they'll actually say to me, you know what? I like coming to work. I really thoroughly enjoy it. You sit down with a leader and they're talking about how they get together for lunches where they're not allowed to bring in electronics or talk work. They get to know each other. They're figuring stuff out. They figure out how to play to each other's strengths. So the point is, it really kind of works. And so how do you do this?
We do that at dinner here at Security Weekly, actually, right? I mean, that's one of the goals of those epic dinners.
Yeah,
get to know each other.
And it works, right? And so here's the thing. What they say in this article is design the work, then focus on the people. Design the work for the people. What that means is a lot of us will say, okay, I need a position that does X. Go find me somebody who fits that. And this says, you can actually do it the opposite way. I need somebody who's really talented. And when you identify somebody who's really talented, then you can say, okay, where are your strengths best used on my team today? Now, does that always work? No, but I'll give you an example in security where it's worked a lot. A lot of folks, right? I mean, George was just talking about how do we better conduct our outreach? How do we educate people? How do we work with them? I worked with the CISO last year, and his answer was he went out cycling, right? He's part of a cycling club, went out cycling. One of the guys was a teacher who didn't want to be a teacher anymore. And he said, hey, I got an idea. If I could give you the basics of security that I want to communicate, could you break it down and teach people? The guy went, absolutely. There you go. It's, new connection, brought somebody in, played to his strengths, give him something to grow on. Like it worked out really well for everybody. So the point is, I think we can do that. And the idea is if you're trying to find somebody, right? So you're either trying to build your team, you want to keep your team, or you need to recruit new people to your team. I think you need to be able to answer these questions. Is somebody enjoying it? Are you enjoying it? Is your team having a good time? Because that's where they're spending a good portion of their waking hours. the team members feel like their strengths are being used and used properly? And are they growing? Are they learning?
Well,
and it doesn't always mean training, but are they getting better?
Used and used properly are two different things, right?
Fair
because,
point.
you know, a lot of us do have skills. Like certainly we can fix people's printers and stuff. That's not necessarily something that we want to do, right? And I've certainly made career choices, you know, based on some of those things that, I was using my skills, but they weren't necessarily the skills that I wanted to grow and develop. And certainly I think probably the number one reason I've made career changes is growth, right? In the current position, you look at the growth path and you're like, either it's not one that you want to pursue, like that's not where I'm going in my career, we're just going in two different paths, right? Or it's there really is no growth path for me, you know, beyond this. And those have been some major factors, and to really, it's my own personal career, why I've made, you know, choices. And, you know, now today, having my own business, I very carefully work with everyone to make sure that they've got a growth plan. Where do you go from here kind of thing. So that's super important. Enjoyable is somewhat subjective. Certainly if they have a growth path and using their strengths and building upon, you know, strength is not just a skill, right? Maybe they want to acquire skills and they're able to do that in their position. Both those things I think are main contributors, not all of them, to your enjoyment in the workplace. There's also, I think, Michael, culture, right, which we kind of touched on as well.
Yep. No, I think it's important because a lot of times we say either, you know, well, there's a shortage. What can I possibly do? Create the right environment. And this gave us some really smart ways to do it.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what
your manager is a huge, and we've covered, I think, articles about that. Your manager is a huge part of your enjoyment or not at work, certainly as well. And micromanagement, I can't ever remember a time when anyone's talked to me about any job or career where they're like, you know, I'm micromanaged at my job and I really love it. Like you never hear people say that, right?
Yeah. You know what? Really, I'd give this place an A+. What the micromanagement is fantastic,
just awesome. I love it.
You know what people don't like are meetings.
That's true.
They're those necessary things. So here's what I really enjoyed about this particular article. So that it's titled "The Company Spent 300,000 Hours a Year in Pointless Meetings." They basically broke out and said, okay, so we had this number of meetings, this number of support people supporting these number of board meetings, directors meetings, and it spent us like 300,000 hours in a year just doing that. What it points out, I think, are two things that we often overlook when we let ourselves be driven by meetings. The first of which is to be in a productive meeting, you need to do some level of preparation. And that may involve other people in the meeting also needing to support that meeting. So in other words, it's not just pop in for 20 minutes or an hour or whatever the meeting scheduled time is. If you say yes to a meeting, you're also agreeing to be prepared, to be present when you're there, and then to follow up on whatever comes out of it. And I know that's me asking for a lot because a lot of people are like, Michael, I show up. People talk. I didn't even need to be here. They could have sent an email, right? There's all sorts of stuff. So the question is, how do we get out of it? First thing it says is, right, think about what you accept. In other words, are you blindly saying yes to everything or no to everything? Or are you actually being thoughtful about it? Paul, I remember we had this conversation in an article a couple weeks ago on this. And the idea was, especially if you're in security, if it's a chance to get out and meet other people that are influential in the organization or that are the folks that you're trying to serve, and it's good for building the relationship, you should accept. If it's routine status updates and other things that really are handled by email, probably better to decline. Do you have any strategies that you've kind of worked out?
Yeah, I think that a strategy we're employing now is kind of we just talk rather than sit down and have a formal meeting and kind of break up the meetings so that we're all just not stopping everything we're doing and talking about everything all in one meeting. You know, this year I've certainly made an effort to just make sure we just talk informally rather than, you know, tie everyone up in some kind of regular meeting. I think that's been working. I don't know, it's kind of a fluid thing that we're always working on, certainly. And we've toyed with the idea of like a scrum, but I'm kind of like, I've gotten away from the scrum style meetings because I'd rather just go talk to individual people or teams. And then have a meeting every once in a while where we all get together. Of course, I think the other thing too is if you find yourself having a lot of meetings, and I think Michael can attest to this, right? It probably means you've got some communication or process issues elsewhere in the organization.
Yep.
And you can cut down on your meetings if you've really refined your processes. You've got taken things out of email, out of Excel spreadsheets. If you eliminate the need for a meeting, that's been my goal this year. And I think we have, to a large degree, certainly accomplished that we don't need to have a meeting about, like every single show, for an example, that everyone just knows what's going on because our processes have been refined over time, and we're constantly refining our processes and using technology to support that, such that we don't need meetings. Now we do. We do have sales meetings here. It's largely because Joe is our new salesperson, right? And those, I don't know. It's important that is some inside baseball, right? Michael and I have been working in this field for a really long time, likely over 20 years, right? And so we can look at a vendor and know what they do and be like, yeah, I think that's a good sales thing, or I know someone there, or whatever, and move the process along. And those meetings are important for that, because for me to do that informally, I think is hard. So I don't know. There's some inside baseball about meetings around here anyway.
No, and I like it. The thing I want to press on is that we're investing in the process. We're thinking about it. We're discussing it. We're investing in it. We're making those incremental changes, and then we're seeing what works and what doesn't work, and we're continuing to move forward. The teams that do that tend to do better. The teams that just kind of go, it's the way it is. I don't know, dude. My calendar fills up. I'm not allowed to say no.
Right.
You are allowed to say no. Let me tell you something. I've heard of a team implementing, and I personally really love this, and I've thought about how to do it better. Agendas and schedules. So the point is, if you're being invited to something and there's a meeting, well, I want to know how many meetings, and I want to know kind of what that schedule looks like and what you're expecting of me. Or even simpler, if there's an invite, there should be an agenda, and it should be clear. And that benefits everybody for a couple of reasons. It tells me what's up with the meeting. It also tells me what, if anything, I need to prepare, and what, if anything, I can anticipate I might need to do as a result of it. So here's the thing I've seen a team do, and I personally love this. I need to follow up and kind of get some details. If the meeting is scheduled and it does not have an agenda, it gets canceled. Mm-hmm. Now, the way they did it, they have one person on the team who's able and responsible to do that. So basically, their job is kind of go check the open meetings and kind of go, whoop, that one doesn't have an agenda. It's canceled. They said they've freed up so much time on the team because of that. And kind of like your point, Paul, I didn't need a meeting for that. I didn't need a scrum for that. I just needed to stop by and tell so-and-so, or I needed to update this spreadsheet. And so it's interesting the way to do that. And what I would say then is, think about that in terms of what you accept. If what you're accepting is clear, right? Like, okay, I get why I got invited to this. It's useful to me. Oh yeah, and look, they've got an agenda, and I got a good sense that they're going to run the clock the right way. Sure, accept that. But if you keep finding that people are wasting your time, then don't accept their meetings.
Right. And I think there's a classification of meetings where you have some meetings with the goal being that you don't have to meet about that topic anymore. And that's kind of the strategy I've taken. Like we don't need to meet about this topic because everyone should just know this information. So let's adjust the processes so we all know this information. That alleviates friction, as Michael has taught us, right? And now if we do have a meeting, we can talk about something new and exciting and plan the next series of meetings, build that into our process. So I don't really like the long-standing meetings, because it means that if we have to get in a room and talk about something that's operational as just one classification, that's probably bad, and we need to fix our processes. Now, there are times when you do want to meet, and the meeting should be exciting. It should be, we're meeting to brainstorm ideas about a new topic, about a new process, about a new product or service, right? Those are the exciting meetings that you want to attend. When someone says, well, we have to have a meeting every day and we have to go through all the tickets or some kind of process, I tend to find those are the meetings that people dread the most, right? Or like when everyone goes on the room and talks about what they're working on, those can be some horrible, horrible meetings.
Yeah, and typically that's when people reveal that they didn't prepare, they didn't do that work, and whatever else. We'll close this part on this. I've been telling people for the better part of to 2 decades, if the meetings don't serve you, cancel. And I've been getting a lot better about that myself. In fact, we're going to talk in a little bit. We're going to tie a bunch of these things together really fast. I'll show you how to get that time back in your day. I've been using those techniques myself. They work fine. Somebody really needs a meeting, I'm happy to do it. And I'm always, as we teach people the value prop, we keep teaching them straight talk. When you run a straight talk meeting, people get to the end, they were heard, they felt heard. They go, that was 25 minutes? Wow. Okay, cool.
Right.
Because you cut to the chase, but that takes a lot of time to get there. All right, OKR. Have you heard of the OKRs? Is that a concept you've worked with in any of the companies you've been part of?
What is it?
The OKR, the objective and the key result.
I have not.
Okay, so this is made famous by Google. It's been used a number of places, and it's what I just said. It's an objective and a key result. So the idea is that there's some level of planning or intention, and you say this is the objective, and this is the quantifiable key result. So you can't just say, for example, my objective, is better security, and my key result is security is better. That's not it. It needs to be turned on OKRs. I had some of the early adopters of Straight Talk say, "Have you ever looked at OKRs?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, why? And I said, well, because you're showing me how to do my OKR faster and better. Well, cool. I like it. So here's what Tomas Tunk puts into it that I hadn't considered, and I really enjoy it. Success, at least when he was learning to do them at Google, is 70%. Now think about that, because in security, right, and I was ready to go, wow, what happened there? We're conditioned culturally that 100 is good, and 70% is bad. And it's interesting because when I was more actively, they did not anticipate that everybody would work 100 billable hours a week. It's whatever. Yeah, cool. The point is, if you were at that like 68 to 80% utilization, that was a success, and the rest of it was baked in. That if you could just get 75% of the way there, 70%, that was good. It meant you set a stretch, and you could get there, and you were thinking about how to measure it. And I thought, that's really kind of interesting, because a lot of times in security we do those. I want to reduce attacks. I want to increase whatever and I thought that was kind of interesting, but the sub point to this is consistent. As an individual, you have OKRs that should fit into your team OKRs, that should fit into the division or the group OKR. The point is, you're a more specific component of something larger. So when we're looking at teams, if you can get rid of the meetings and give people time back, what are they going to work on? This gives you a way to focus it and measure that it was done successfully. So I'm just, I like it. And I think if anybody else is using them, they should help out with that. Let me just cross right into the next one, and then we'll wrap these two together every week. I love this. This is the kind of article that, frankly, read it and then go back and reread it, and then go back and reread it again. I read this a while ago, and it's really got me thinking about a lot of stuff. So we've talked over the last couple of months about makers versus managers. Makers need a lot of uninterrupted space and time. They can get into the flow. They can get things done and figured out. It's that deep work and all that time. They're going to manage the time. There's no right. There's no wrong. In fact, what I'm kind of finding is the answer is often, yep, need a little bit of both. Now, we've talked to some extent about chaos time and building time in. And I want a lot of teams that kind of split their responsibilities between something operational and then as well something that's more consultative or educational or what have you. And they say, but Michael, we've got to be reactive so much. How do I possibly do this? That's the answer, right? You can book in and know this time is going to be reactive, and that's your time for it. And then here's the other stuff around it. The Untouchable day basically says you have got to get yourself a space once a week where it doesn't get canceled. You work on it. You get it done. And what I really liked about it was the suggestion you schedule them weeks in advance. In the article, he said he schedules them 16 weeks out. And then his only rule is this: they can't be deleted, but they can be moved. So you get a keynote, you need to go work with a client. Something really important there on, in your day scheduled was Thursday. So you can push it to Friday or Wednesday. Use any other day between the bumpers of the weekends. But every day, once a week, you've got to have time where you're not touchable. What I loved was the conclusion. He's done it for a year. So people will say, well, what if there's an emergency? What if there's a this? He's like, yeah, it hasn't happened yet. But if it did, we can handle it accordingly. He said, now that I've been purposely scheduling a day a week for the last year, do I continue to schedule? He's like, yes. In fact, some days I block out 2. And I went, yep, there you go. If somebody can do this and they actually implement it, what I've found a lot of people do, Paul, is they'll say, oh, I totally want to do that. I like this idea that, okay, so here's how they kind of go together. Stop accepting stuff that you don't need to, unless it's aligned with your OKRs, your objective and your key result. I would not define more than 3 for myself. And even then, that might be a stretch. But again, if you get to 70%, you're doing well. Cool. So then within those, give yourself at least a day a week to go advance those key things. Or 2 days a week, one that looks at how you do as a team and as individuals, and a day. Telling you, when you do that, it makes such a difference. And you've been talking about that. How do you feel? I mean, it's got to be tougher for you with all the shows that we record. How do you get that time you need to do that deeper work?
Like having a whole day, that's for like in a more managerial kind of role, probably not in the cards. Technical folks, I think if you're a technical person or managing technical people, you got to give them that day. You got to say, this is your day, no meetings. this is your day or half a day to go work on something creative that maybe like larger companies doesn't relate necessarily to your work. Like I feel that stuff is very, very important. I think for me, and I think for a lot of us, right, we got a lot of wheels in motion. You got to block off time. I do block off time today where you can work on specific things. What I like to do, and it's just the way that I work, I tend to have like 3 different things that I know I really want to work on or need to work on. Hopefully it's both, right? And when I get to that time, I have a choice of things I can work on because my brain just might not be in the right place to, especially when it comes to writing. Like there's a lot of my job today that requires descriptive writing. And I feel like there's a certain mood or mode you got to be in to do some of that descriptive writing. When I get in that mode, I try and get as much done as I can and get out ahead of it and do all that descriptive writing. And if that just doesn't catch me, or maybe I write something and I go, I know I need to get back to that, I'll switch and go do something technical, right? I'll do some technical prep for a webcast or a show. Usually I'm in a good place to do something technical, as I don't get as much time as I used to do that stuff. So I think for me, I don't know if it works for other people, that's great too. Having a list along with some blocked off time so you can kind of pick and choose. Maybe I read an article and I'm like, I'm really kind of motivated to do this. Like, I know I've got some descriptive writing to do, but like, I got to get this piece done. And then I know the next day I've got a block of time as well. Now I can work on that descriptive writing piece. So I think you got to kind of balance. I'm still working with my schedule. I need to come up with a new kind of work schedule for myself where I've got a little more of that flexibility. I think in the past it's been a little too rigid. Like I've blocked out some time and I have to work on this. And I'm like, well, I just read an article and I really want to do this, prep this technical segment because that's what's, tickle my fancy right now. So I think for me, especially, you got to be flexible with it as much as you can.
It's a classic Goldilocks problem, right? It's if we're too rigid, it doesn't work. And if we're too loose, it doesn't work. It's that just right. You're on a journey to figure out, I'm on a journey to figure out, which means we're going to have a really cool segment on this somewhere in the next couple of weeks. And we'll share what we've learned, and I'm also going to then share some other strategies and things for people to check out. The last article for discussion, and we're about out of time, so I'm going to make it quick, is it was how good customer experience can turn bad. Swipe with the credit card. It was pretty well written, and the person was talking about going to Vegas, and the card reader in the back of the cab stopped working. The cabbie said, "Oh, no worries. There's a procedure for this," and then he goes on to describe it, and it was mind-numbing for everybody. And he said, it either meant that they thought through that this would happen and had a really good backup plan in place, or it just happens all the time and they have a real bad system for handling it, but there's no other choice. And it turned out to be that. His point, though, going on through it that I just wanted to point out from a security perspective is, do we think about what the experience is like? And it says, listen, you need to treat your employees like customers. Now, I've worked with a bunch of security teams that actually feel that they serve the rest of the organization and they are, in fact, their customers. But then think about how your customers are using the technology to serve your customers and your end users. Paul and I have talked both on air and off air about a bunch of organizations just using security as an excuse or a bludgeoning tool. Hopefully, you're not falling prey to that. But flip side, have you looked at what that process is like for the ultimate consumer of whatever services you're providing? Because I find it's overlooked in a lot of places and not just in security, but that starts to give us the ability when people have an interaction with you and it's pleasant to like, wow,